So basically what we create should be started here on the right side. This is the sidebar. This is where everything happens. We're modifying here, we are adjusting here, we are fine-tuning our object. This is like a headquarter for everything that's happening. The top area, the top shelf is for the main tools like transformation and basic pop-ups, basic operations like align objects in space or making a mirrored version. So keep an eye on these. There are many fancy icons, but most of them used by hotkeys or used just as references. So for example, just a very basic example to clean this up. If I'm pressing W, that is the hotkey for moving an object. And right at the moment when I'm pressing the W, this icon changes. So even if I don't use it, I'm frequently checking with my eye that, okay, I'm in move mode now, or if I'm pressing E, like element, if I'm pressing E, that is the next one that is about rotation. So keep an eye on these when you're changing up things. And one thing I have to tell quite honestly, so every 3D software is crowded with hotkeys. There's a reason. So yes, of course, because it's much faster to work with, but it's not just that. If you are not working fast enough, it's harder to make decisions. At least it's really overwhelming. So most of you had no experience in 3D or not that deep. So you just have to prepare for this, because if you can't use it fast enough, it will be just really a struggle. So you can't really see things changing. You can't really give yourself a feedback on rotating things around and walking through. Now this is one phenomenon, that these buttons are actually like indicator buttons. Another tiny thing that's a little bit strange if you're coming from other software is we have kind of a pop-up buttons. So what does it mean? Here's the selection type button. This is a rectangular selection region. So can you see that? Is it visible there? Can you see the tiny little triangle in the bottom of the right? Okay, there's a little tiny triangle. Oh, just not. So if you see this tiny triangle right at my cursor. So that means when I'm holding the left mouse button, it will bring me furthermore options to choose from. So I can select rectangular selection, circular selection, polygonal lasso. There is a kind of a draw selection, so it's a basic freehand selection, and I can spray paint selection. It's depending on the models. Right now we don't change it, but this is what you have to know. Another thing, it is a kind of a cycle button. So whenever you see something like this, there's a chance you have more options there. Okay, more options. All right, different type of snaps, so many things. Okay, so if you get lost and you can't find the icon I'm showing to you, this could be the reason. All right, now here we have the 4 scenes, and 90% will work in one big scene, and it's usually the perspective. So that will be a kind of a maximized viewport. So here we are, this window is active, and can you see the tiny yellowish border around that theme? That's every software has its own highlight system that shows, okay, this one is active, this one's working, something is happening in the background. Now, regarding to the viewports, this one is showing which one is highlighted, which one is selected, and which one is the active. Now, you can activate the viewport with any type of button. So you can activate the viewport with any type of clicks, but the left click is actually selection. So this is what happens. Let me create a teapot. So I'm clicking on a teapot, selecting the teapot. The command is active. And if I'm clicking away, right now I'm in creation mode. So this is my second color. Yellowish is the highlights for kind of an active viewport, but this blue one is showing that command, that option, that is active and running. Now here comes the funny part. If you're clicking in again with the left mouse button, it will enter you in this creation method. So you're doing it again. You're not quitting. if you're pressing a right click and nothing happens. And sometimes it is strange, but practically it's a very good thing that you can do a kind of an exit command in the viewport. So if you don't want to create any more teapots, then you just press a right click. Okay, right click in 3dsmax is exit. Okay, and it's not just that, but you can select things with, activate the windows with the right click as well. And if you're pressing it again, it is popping up a quad menu. Now, it will be a quad, I promise. Right now it's just two-part, but it will be a quad menu. And many, many things will be available here. Now, let me clean this up. I don't know how do you feel about this user interface and how do you feel now, but I think it's a little bit overwhelming at the beginning. So you see all the names, all the different icons and everything. But honestly, 3dsmax is a very old software. Some people like to use it with hotkeys. Some people are only using it with icons. Other people only using it from right clicks. Okay, every solution is working. The best solution is usually the hotkeys because that's the fastest and most effective. But let me show what I mean. So you can walk up here and press move button. You can use the hotkey, that's the second variation, to switch between rotation and press W for reverting back to move. That's another option. Or you can press a right click and here we have move again. Okay, you have three different ways to move around an item. You can rotate your screen by holding the middle mouse button and holding rotate with that. Now, what type of mouse are you using? Is it clear that we have a 4-button mouse? Should I explain this? Okay, are you using the scroll wheel press down button a lot, or you are just scrolling with the wheel? Strange question. So this is what you should know about this. So we have to save our joints. So if you're working a lot with 3D in the future, think ahead and try to use a mouse that has a fairly soft middle mouse button. So that means when I'm scrolling with the mouse wheel, this is what happens. This is a standard incremental zoom. But if I'm pressing down the mouse wheel, I'm not scrolling, it will become a button. And now it's the fourth action of a standard modern mouse. And when I'm pressing the Alt key, that is the rotation. So actually all the viewport navigation is done with the scroll wheel and the scroll wheel press down. So let's walk through about selecting items. So selecting is working this way. No matter what, if you are in select mode or rotation mode or simple select object mode, that, by the way, the hotkey for this is Q, and selected move is W, E is for rotation, and R is for scale. So if you look down to your keyboard, you will see that these letters are next to each other. So that means at the end of the day, usually your left hand will be on the keyboard, and you don't really have to change location that much. It will be fairly easy to find this. So left click was used to create something. Right click was used to exit something. If you're pressing again right click, it will bring up the quad menu. If you don't see the quad menu yet, for example, let me show the situation. I'm pressing a right click here in the front view, and the first right click is activating the view itself. And if I'm pressing again the right click, it will bring up the menu. If I'm in a creation mode, so I'm in a teapot, I want to create a teapot, and I want to switch viewport and want to show the quad menu. This is what happens. First right click will activate the window. Second right click will exit the command, and third right click will open up the quad menu. Okay, so there's a chance you will click right click 3 times till you reach to the pop-up menu to select the next move of yours. Okay, to select is simply point and click on the model. This is a simple selection. If you want to select everything, you can zoom out by using the mouse wheel, select everything with a window. Now you have a full selection. Or you can use the Control-A command to select everything. It's just like in text editing. So Control-A is selecting everything. Another option is Control-I is Invert Selection. It's quite handy if you have a tiny part you don't want to take care of, but every others should be modified. You just selecting the tiny part and invert your selection. If you want to add anything to the selection, it is happening with Control. And this is unusual for many of the softwares because it's usually the Shift key. Okay, so instead in 3dsmax it will be the Control. So I'm adding each other, and then I'm using Alt key to subtract. So Alt key is remove. Clicking on an item, selecting the other one, Alt key is to remove from the selection. Okay, now what you see here, we have these teapots, we have these viewports, and you might ask, okay, so what's the main difference between the viewports? These are orthographic viewports. That means these are not really, so there is no shortage, there is no perspective effect. These are just straight, always parallel, always 90 degrees representatives of the projection, of a side view projection, top, front, etc. projections. Now, what happens if you are in full screen mode? What happens if you are only see one viewport? To maximize the viewport, and many of the viewport commands could be found down here. So if you get lost, you can always use this cube for rotating things around. Okay, so if you forget how to use this middle mouse button stuff, next time you can start from here. And if you want to zoom, for example, you can use these keys. This is very slow. It's not the best option, but still you can use this. So at least if you want to explore the software without going further in the hotkeys, you can use that. And this is the maximize viewport. And here's the concept when you are working in a maximize viewport. So you can go back and forth with this Alt W button, and here's a funny thing. The software always recognizes where my cursor is. So if I'm here and hovering here and I'm pressing Alt W, maximizing the viewport, that will be the viewport I see. If I'm going up here in the front, that will be that I see. Okay, so it shows up, it's kind of a selection. This is true for zooming as well. Now, there's a phenomenon that's used. It's called zoom about mouse point, and zoom about mouse point is about kind of a focus type of zoom. So this is what happens. So if I'm selecting this lid and I'm keeping here my mouse, the scene is zoomed in and keep it focused respective what I have, where I have the mouse point. Now, if I'm zooming here, this will be the center of zooming. If I'm going to this lid, sorry, sprout, this will be the location. It's good if you're looking around and you want to explore the scene just by keeping a distance, then zooming in for a particular part, observe it, check it, and going on. Now, the problem with that is, and it's a common beginner thing, and I will explain a couple of these beginner things because the more you hear it, it will be easier to recognize that what's happening. So if you get lost and you don't see anything, what should we do? And the best option is to press just Z as the hotkey, and it will bring back everything. It's the zoom. It's the ultimate zoom to selection. So if I have selected a teapot and I'm pressing Z, now it will be a full selection and zoomed in. So every time you get lost, press Z, and now you're boom and back. If you are in this viewport and we want to see what's happening in the front side or the left side, we can just press T for example, that is for top. We can press F, that is for front, L, that is for left, and P back is perspective. So you don't even have to leave this full screen mode. Okay, now, one thing we have to address early on, that spacebar is a little bit tricky in Max, because when you have a selection and you selected this teapot, even 2, and I'm pressing the spacebar actually locks our selection. So here, if you are able to see that we have this lock enabled now, and this is the highlight, this shows in yellow. Okay, so yellow is usually that, okay, it's a padding operation. This is an old school one. So the old highlight color was yellow, and they kept it because it's so much more eye-catching than the blue one. So here we go. The problem is I'm not able to select anything else. Okay, the selection is locked. It is great if you're building up a city, or if you have a character and you're animating the tongue, for example, that's inside the head, and it's pretty hard to select it. You can do it, not a big problem, but if the scene is crowded and you have to select something inside the figure, you don't want to click away accidentally and just exit from selection. Because when you're clicking away, that exits selection. So spacebar is used to lock your selection, and if you're not able to select anything else, this is the reason, because you have the spacebar pressed. Okay, so this is one way to click and select things, or you can use the Scene Explorer on the side. So if I have this teapot 001 or teapot 002, I can do it. So that may work just as fine as anything else. All right, now, so let me explain why this viewport cube could be an issue. It's not true for everybody, but if you are using only this cube, you might find trouble when editing things. So the reason is, here's this label, it says front, but if I'm pressing front, it's not an orthographic view, it's still a perspective, it's still a virtual camera view, and it means it is distorted. So it's a little bit misleading. It tells you it is a front view, but it is a view from the front, but it is a camera view. All right, so it's not equal with this one. So what you see here, if it says front, then you could be sure that's a dead accurate front view. But if it says perspective, even if you press on front, it won't make it to a front view, all right? So when you edit something accurately, you're designing your scene, for example, you want to measure a scenery for a build, and you want to make accurate measures, that could be hard. All right, now, so what you see here is actually a kind of a wireframe mode. It is kind of a see-through mode. You don't have to be afraid of it because you can switch it anytime. And we will use the function keys for this. If you don't want to use the function keys, you can switch from the default shadings like wireframe override or default shading, so you can do that, or you can press F3, function key 3. It's not F plus 3, it is function key 3. So that's one way. If you get lost, but you don't want to choose and go to the front view, you want to stay in perspective, you can press F3 to see through items. Or you can press F4 to see the models with the wires. Now, why is it interesting? When we design a set, when we want to create a rendering of our content, we have to know that referring to the screen play, how is it, or the storyboard, we should know about the level of zoom in. So if we have to show this sprout as close up as this, it's not good enough. It's absolutely not good enough. And this is why I'm using a lot this function key 4 because it shows me, okay, I have edges around here and this is a really coarse. It's not as refined as it should be. Excuse me. So a part of the game is to know what is the final goal. If you want to show a high resolution model, you have to model that way to show the details. Now, in this case, what should I do? What can I do? Now, this object is a standard primitive object. Standard primitive object is listed here. We've used the teapot here. And standard primitive object has a basic level of editing. We can edit them, not much, but a few parameters we can change. And this is good for design. So now how to change it? What is the logic on the sidebar? As I was told, this is kind of a command bar, so you will reach everything here, and if you want to change, modify, adjust, you will find it here. And I'm switching to the Modify panel, and the Modify panel brings me the information I'm looking for. So here, this is a teapot type of element. Yes, it's cool. And here we are. This is what we are looking for, parameters. And right at the first level, the scene is set to centimeters, so I can adjust the radius. And this will be exactly 30 all around here. And if I'm not satisfied with the resolution, I can change the number of segments. Now, one thing that might crash a computer. This is called spinner drag. So please keep an eye on the little triangles. That's a warning sign in 3dsmax. If you see a triangle like here that I was showing, where we are at this rectangular marquee selection, if you see this tiny triangle that shows, okay, we have more buttons. If you see the triangles here that shows, we can adjust it somehow differently than going in and type in the value. So I can type in 20. That's good. But if I want to adjust it a little bit more freehand, I can go in and hold the left mouse button, and this is called spinner drag. And spinner drag is really effective to change up the sizes and the proportions when you are designing the scene you have. But the problem is, you are not, please do not do it right away. So first test, anytime you see this, test the value, just click in, because if you have segments, it is just crazy fast. And it could be really, really dense in no time, okay? And it can crash the computer. So please stay away. If you see segments or iterations, usually those are not adjusted this way, just click it. If you see radius, length, centimeters, any values, that's usually just a size value, so it won't be a problem. Okay, now, as you see, we have a couple basic options, so I can turn off the spout, lead, handle, almost everything. And we are looking for these because we can create basic shapes. So if you want to create a mug or something like that, how can you do this? You can go into standard primitives, and for example, you can select a tube and drag out the fundamentals of a tube and create it. And here we go. This could be a good base, a good foundation for creating a mug. If you want to make it a little bit more interesting, we can add a modifier on it. Now we'll try to present you the logic of modeling. So the first step is to create some kind of a primitive that will be the base of your model. You can rotate around the scene, observe it, check it, and if you're not satisfied with the size or whatever, you should go to the Modify panel. And in the Modify panel, you can change the basic settings. And once you have the basic settings changed, you can move on and look for other ways to manipulate the model. And this manipulation is usually happening with modifiers. Now, modifiers, there are plenty of modifiers. So you can reach them through the modifiers list. So modifiers list is showing everything in order. So this way, if I want to, if I'm looking for a parametric modifier, let me choose taper. Taper modifier will do this. So it will be able to add a kind of a curvature to the mug. So if I'm interested to create a shape like this, I will be able to change and add another details. So if you see this tiny triangle, again, triangles are usually showing you can open up things, there is more, or you can adjust that here. So I'm pressing on the triangle, and now something revealed, and that is the sub-object levels. Sub-objects are kind of an under the hood solutions to adjust something. The first line of adjustments is happening on the top of the hierarchy. So taper level is selected. If I'm adjusting the taper level, the parameters related to taper will appear at the bottom. But if I want to adjust the tube, I want to go back to the tube level because I'm not satisfied with the number of segments, for example, because of the resolution. I'm walking down in the modifier, and here we are with the tube, and I'm increasing the number of segments, or sides in this case. And I will be careful just pressing one by one, or going in and typing, for example, 50. And okay, it's pretty nice. The side is still coarse, so what I can do, maybe, which one? It should be the height segments. And now that is also nice and rounded. And if I want to go back and adjust the taper, I can do it. If the taper is too much, it's opening too much, it's like a bowl instead of a vase, for example. If I want to go that, I can reduce the amount value to a negative one. And now it should be a base for a vase. Okay, this area here is called Modifier Stack. It's kind of a system. It is a hierarchical system. So the first thing is happening is the tube. On top of the tube, there is in hierarchy, there is a taper modifier. If I want to add more things, I can add more on top of it. Now, if you remember, we were choosing the taper from the modifiers list here and the menu. So it was a parametric one in the former, and that was taper. But what happens, I'm looking for this bend, but I can reach it somewhere else. Let me show the logic. So instead of using this, it's a little bit slow to always open it up, waiting for it, parametric deformers, look for that, and bend. If you know the modifier you want to use already, you can choose from the modifier list, press B, because that's the first letter of bend, and here we go, B is listed. I'm clicking on bend, and now I have the second modifier on top of my base model. And whatnot, I will try to bend this to create a new shape. It could be an animation, it could be a ways. These are animated. You can animate these values later on. So this is the logic here. If you are curious about what's happening at taper level, you have to walk down to the taper level. If you want to change your original object, you can change it. You can adjust the height, for example, and everything will be updated because everything is happening right after it. So in the hierarchy, you can do that. If you want to turn off something, you can turn off the visibility for that particular effect. So if I don't want to see taper, but I'm curious what bend does, if only bend is enabled, I can turn it on and off. And the biggest deal that's used the most is called show and result. I will talk about this over and over because we'll use it a lot, but let me show it first time here. Is I'm on the first level, and right now show and result is turned on. That means if I'm changing something, everything is updating. If I'm turning this off, I see only the current level. So if tube is selected, I see only what's happening on tube. If I'm going to taper, I see what taper does with the tube because the tube is below this. If I'm going to the bend, it will show everything. All right. So if you want to work on the bottom area and the lowest level, and you turn on the show and result, boom, then you see the changes you made. Okay, so that's one thing. To select an item, you can choose and click on the element and press Control to click more to select more. But you can also come here in the Scene Explorer and just click on the name of the element. If you want to hide away an element, you can just turn off on and off the visibility. So it's fairly easy to do something like that. Now what happens if you want to create something inside an object? What should you do? Now here is a technique. So I want to create a sphere and put it inside this element. Now to do that, let me select first this element and press Alt X to make it see-through. Now it is a see-through model. And I can go down here to select sphere, create a sphere, and go in and push and put it inside the object. All right, and I can see easily because it's a see-through model. And now I can go back in, select the model again, and press Alt X, and now it's not a see-through model anymore. Or I can press Function key 3 to make it a wireframe, and now it's visible. So if it is an eyeball-like item, I can select that. Now, it's time to talk about move and how to move things around. It's not just a tool. It is also about how to use the gizmo. In other applications, for example, ZBrush is using a different type of move and scale functions. Here we have separated move, rotation, and scale because it can be really accurate, and we have plenty of options. And if you combine the select and move and rotate things all together, it could be a little bit messy. So this is why we have separated options for that. Now, can you see the gizmo here? This is called a gizmo. If we are switching to rotation, it will show this type of gizmo. This is the scale type of gizmo. Gizmos are kind of a multi-purpose positioning tools. So if I want to move this only along the x-axis, I'm selecting the x-axis. Can you see the color of it? So when you are hovering over something, it's usually changing to yellow. So the x-axis by default is red. If I'm hovering over it, it will be turned to yellow. That means that's active. Okay, just like the highlight of a hover over, or a highlight of the active window, or the highlight at the lock function. So yellow means, okay, this is the selected direction. So if I want to move it away in this way, it's okay. If I'm moving to the Y direction, that's it. Why do we have this cube here inside? Because I can move in a restriction of 2 axes at a time. So I can move it to Z and Y, or I can move it to Z and X, of course, so we have all the variations. And if you want to move it freely, you can just go in dead center, and then you will be able to move it as you wish. But usually we are trying to follow and look things around. Now, if you watch the screen, you can recognize that I'm moving and rotating around a lot. And without rotating, without exploring the scene, you won't be able to recognize what's happening. You won't be able to relation. So right now, I'm looking for a fit to this. And even so, I have to turn on the wireframe to see, but I still see that it is way too big. So let me reduce the radius. And now I have to rotate to check if the fit is really accurate or not. Okay, now it is fairly accurate. I even have some room here and there, but I'm satisfied with this. So if I want to create an eye for a chameleon, maybe this should be the process. Okay, I can do it in many ways, but this one is just a basic of creating something, creating inside, make it see-through, and selecting and moving. Now what happens if I want to rotate this item? Of course I have to switch to select and rotate, and the principles are the same. So if I'm hovering over a named axis, it will turn to yellow. That means, okay, now I'm moving just along that axis. And can you see the values changing? Those are in degrees. So if you want to accurately rotate things for animation, for modeling, whatever, you can do that by reading those numbers. Not just that. So let me start rotating this element, and please look at the bottom here. So let me undo this. Ctrl Z is the undo and Ctrl Y is the redo, but you can also find them in here at the top left corner. So if I want to rotate, but I want to make it accurately, I can start my rotation and just eyeballing it. In this case, it's funny, it's eyeballing it. But my goal is to -25. I'm going to rotate slightly, -25. And here I have this coordinate system. And it tells me, okay, I'm really close to -25. It's actually almost a dead inch. So let me just highlight this text and type in -25 and hit enter, and voila, here we go. Now it's absolutely accurate. Or if I'm switching to move, and I want to move away this eye socket, right now when the model is selected, this bottom area will automatically switch. It will automatically switch to whatever you choose. So if you're moving, it will show the length values in centimeters. If you're rotating, it will show the degrees. If you are switching to scale, it will show the percentage. So right now, because I'm in move mode, I have an element that is selected. It shows me that, okay, respecting this grid center, because this is the 0 point, I'm away 53 centimeters away and -75 centimeters across. So what I can do, if I want to make it centered, I can walk in and press 0 and press 0 again. And now it's in the center. So let me move this away. Okay, so when we are starting to model a character, when we are starting to model anything, usually we start it in the center. Reason is simple. We will try to use symmetry. We will try to pass on the figure or the model. So if you are working in a team, you have to make sure that you don't have to look for the item you're modeling. If it's centered, it's fairly easy to recognize it and find the model. Now, in this case, this model is a little bit off, so now I have to get back this manually, but later on I will show how to do it. Okay, now there is another way. Let me move these guys away from here. Now I know how to move, and I want to place this guy in the center, but a little bit easier. Yeah, there is a solution that's even easier than going in and typing these values like 0, 0, 0. It's just kind of boring. So if you don't want to always use this, you can press a right click on the spinner. Okay, remember the 2 arrows and holding left mouse, that is the spinner drag. This item called spinner itself. But if you're just pressing the right click on the spinner, it will 0 the value. It will revert the value to 0. This one is also used in animation. So if you have a hand and it's rotated or just bent the wrist, and you want to reset your wrist, you can 0 the value. So instead of a 90-degree rotation, it will snap back to the original place. All right, and we can we can make many things a little bit faster by this. So that's another solution. Why do I like? What's the only reason I really like this cube is because it tells me it shows me where is the front side of my model. And I don't know, is it visible to you, Rasima or Nurai? Do you see it? Is it visible? Is it readable? The front is there. So in my case, it's a problem because, come on, this teapot is not facing really front. It's just in the side. So I have to go in, rotate it, and if I'm not accurate enough, I can go in and type in -90. And here we go. This is it. And now I can be sure that if I'm pressing F as front, it will show the spout towards me. Okay? So if you get lost and you don't know where's the front, where's the side, you will always find this as a reference. Okay? Now, previous lesson we were talking about gears. Do you remember that gears like in psychology, so we have a basic form. If you want to model a full figure, for example, a human head is most important from the front. So your main plane of modeling will be the front plane. But if you're modeling a fish, the side plane is much more interesting. It's much more important. You will not start modeling a fish from the front. You can, but it's a different type of fish. But so usually that will be from the left side. So when you start thinking on how to approach to create a new model, you have to make a decision. Okay, where do I start? Now, let me show this why. So first of all, let me select everything. Control A selects everything. And if you want to delete, the magical hotkey is what a super duper thing is delete. But let me find this on this keyboard. So everything was selected and I've hit delete. And now I'm pressing Z to fit in my grid and it's fully empty. So what I want to talk about is the active grid. Oh no, this guy's talking about again something that I just, okay, so why is it important? So the perspective is like a table, okay? So if you're working with perspective, you put everything on the table. It's just like the top view. The top view is like a floor. Actually, the perspective is like a picnic in the outdoors. You just have the blanket on the floor. That's it. So when I'm creating something on the perspective plane, it will be placed the same way as on top plane. But if I'm creating something on the front plane, it will be put on the wall, the front wall, this. Let me show this by using where is a plane, here it is. So I'm creating a plane on the front, and now you will see this is my front plane, literally and in action. So if I'm creating something on the left side, let me go back to the teapot, that will be created this way. And if I'm adding a plane, this is where we are. Right now, let me select the teapot and pull it through the plane because it was behind, so it was not visible. Okay, so right, if you have a room and you want to put a picture frame on the wall, if you're starting in a perspective, this is what happens. If you're starting in a perspective and you're creating a box for a basic representative of a picture, it's created on the floor. So then you have to move it, lift it up, rotate, accurately rotate, so let me just type it. It's just illogical to do this. It's way too slow. So instead of that, what I will do, I will just go in and create a box right in the front view because I know the front view is actually a back of the room wall. So I can go now and just move it away. And here is the situation when we have to look for the multiple views. Because in perspective, sometimes it's hard to make a decision on, is it intersecting yet with the wall or not? Okay, I see now, but I'm not, it's not that visible. So this is why I'm going for the top view, for example, zooming in, and now I can see, all right, there's it. Okay, here we are. Cool. What should be even better? If we can work in a perspective and we can directly put the things on the item. So, if, for example, if you have a figure and you want to create hair, if you want to create buttons for the shirt, do you really want to go and, well, front view and changing? No, of course not. So instead of that, to make it a little bit easier, we can have an automatic grid. So in my case, I want to put a tiny teapot on the corner of this picture frame. So to do that, let me go and, oh no, I will switch to something else. Teapots are boring now. It's just outdated. So let me switch from standard primitives to extended primitives. Extended primitives are a little bit more complex, not much, but a little bit more. And there's something called torus knot. This is a funny little mess. You will see it instantly. So let me turn on AutoGrid. That's the goal. AutoGrid will recognize what is behind my cursor. So if I want to create my torus not here on this lid, on the top of the lid, I can just go in and create. And here we go. If I want to create this torus knot here at the corner of the picture, I can move it here, drag it out, and here we go. I can lift this up a little bit, but hey, it is there. The proportions are okay, the sizes are okay, so I have a kind of a control over this. It's not always super accurate, so sometimes you have to check manually if it's rotated slightly, because it's depending on the graphics card and other things, but it is there, so at least we don't have to worry about these things that much. Okay, now, and of course, if you want to create a button, for example, or a doorknob, you can use it the same way. The only thing you have to remember that once you turn on this auto grid, it will be turned on, it will remain that way. And if we want to turn it on or off, we have to have something enabled. So it's not working this way. Let me go back to string primitives. You cannot really turn on by default. So it's not just clicking on auto grid and now it's turned. You have to make it active, something, box, and then you can turn it on. All right, and then you can click away if you don't want to use it, but this is the only way. So first you have to make active a thing. Now it's not just this, but what happens if you have something rotated or angled in the space? So if you have the plane here, switching to rotation mode, E is the hotkey for rotation, and rotating along the y-axis. So let me do this. Now, if I want to create a teapot on this slanted plane, I can turn on auto grid, and now I will be able to create it right there. Can you see the grid? Can you see this interactive grid that was just popping? So when I started creating the teapot, it is just an automatically managed and fit grid that can help me to create the element. It's really valuable if you have to create environment designs. So if you have a set for stop motion, for example, and you want to design your scene, or let me give you basic examples on how to use 3D as a beginner. So if you want to create your storyboard, and your goal is to look for creating a simple room and use it as a perspective reference. Now, what you should do, you just have to go in and choose a couple boxes and create wall-like features. So let me just create a wall like this. You can even check the measurement, so you can make it accurate. So if it's 100 centimeter, that's 1 meters. The width is about 10 centimeters, and the height is about, normal indoor height is 250. And now you have a panel. So if you want to design something, you can build up a scene for yourself, and later on you can rotate around and look for the best angle to start drawing. Okay, it's a good reference. You can also check if your figure fits in, or you can also check if you change up something in a scene, what can you do? At this time, we have only one element. And to duplicate the element, you don't have to create it again, of course. You can copy and clone this element. And this will be a huge part in our next lesson, because we will do many modelings with these. We will create a robot head from basic primitives, and we will go into editing and other things. Next time, we will start to work on creating a polygonal character that will be smoothed out. Okay, so we're progressing forward. So if I'm pressing Shift key and drag this, just like I want to move something, but I'm holding down Shift key, it will create a new item for me. And guess what? I can even make multiple copies, not just one. So if I'm holding down Shift key and dragging it out and look for the intersection, so right now these are just barely touching, and I can select instance, for example, and change the number of copies. I can increase the number of copies by 5. So if I'm hitting on here, this is what happens. So I have a single wall element, and now it's multiplied a couple times. And more than that. Do you remember that what I was choosing? So when I'm holding shift and drag, I was choosing instance. Now this instance is a keyword. It really is. So let me cancel this out and show what instance is all about. So when you have an instance and reference, you have a kind of a relation between the elements you copied. These are not independent elements. So when you have one, and when you select that one, and when you start manipulating it and reduce the length, for example, now everything follows. Okay? So if you think in front of the design, so before you finalizing your decisions, it could be a great help. So if you have to propagate and populate stairs or chairs around kind of designing a scenery for an audience, or if you have, for example, little foliage around your scene and you feel that foliages are too big, the proportions are off, and you have this instance logic and relation between those, with one simple click, you can downsize them and use those. Now, by the way, so if you're looking for a drawing reference, just a quick example. So what type? If you want to have to create a city, yeah, you can just create a couple blocks. You can just shift and drag them with a simple copy, and then you can go in a modify panel and change the height value. Okay, so what else? You want to create another skyscraper here and there. That's it. You can even create sidewalks. I'm holding the shift key, moving this down a little bit, keeping a copy, and here we go. This is what I do. I'm increasing the length and the width values, but decreasing the length, the overall height. And boom, I have some kind of a rounding like a sidewalk. If I want to create lamp post or drawing reference for my lamp post, I can go in and select cylinder and start a tiny cylinder and then pull this out. I can just drag, shift and drag, copy it, reduce the height and increase the radius. Okay, so now I have a very basic lamp post. If I'm not satisfied with the proportions, do you remember that we used? There's taper, so I can just press in, choose taper, and go in curve and the opposite direction. And if I want to copy this, I can select this one, holding down shift, and make sure instance is on, set the number of copies to 5 or 10, whatever, and now I have 5 of these columns. And if I'm not satisfied with the overall look, because not promising from my drawing angle of my street scene, I can change the amount, or I can even go in and reduce the radius of the cylinder. Okay, so and now here's a drawing reference. If you want to save it out, one very simple option is to create a from Tools menu, you have a preview, grab viewport, and there's capture still image, and you can create captures like this. Okay, fairly easy. It's not rendering, it's a super fast way to create a capture for yourself, put it in your background, and use it as a drawing reference. If it's a table, it's just, so here you go. If you want to create a table, there's a simple box, not much of a height, you lift it up a little bit, and then create another box, lift this up, look for the intersections, so you want to make sure that these are intersecting, rotate around because this will give you feedback, and then you can just shift copy one by one. Okay, now I have 2 of these, so I'm not copying one again and move it here and then one by one. So once I have 2, I will be just hustling, just select shift and drag, and that's it. Now I have all the 4 legs. Okay, and it's really fast for design a scene and for going basic sceneries, drawing references, creating concept references, or measuring things up, especially if you know and watch out for the units. We will discuss these units when we start modeling next time. Actually, every class we will use the same things. We will use the move, we will use all the rotation tools, we will use all the modifiers. So every time you will be here in the class, you will hear these. So every time I will repeat these so you can learn and make a habit of using those.